I'll go on to reports. So these are all the reports you have access to. You probably have a little less because this demo account, actually maybe like they have this Illinois report card, which I bet you don't have. But for the most part, these are your reports. There is also this function called export data. So it's like these reports usually look a little nicer, like they have titles and columns, and it's just easier to interpret. But then there's export data, where you can export. It's basically just like a really messy spreadsheet of the data that you've entered in a particular section. So like, what do we want to look at? If you want to look at your home visitor export, well, no, let's look at child data for whatever date range you're looking at. And then you can say export data. And then it will go into pending files. So this happens with a lot of reports where you run a report, it will go into pending as it's working. And then once it's ready, it will go down to this file's ready to view. And it's down here. This is the one we just ran. And so it saves them. So if you logged in again tomorrow, you wouldn't necessarily have to rerun it. You could just open this one that you ran the day before. And then you can delete them if you no longer need them.
Oh, okay.
Here's this export. I'm going to download it. It opens, for me, it automatically opens in Excel. So, right, so this is what we're looking at. It's a super big, messy spreadsheet that's not really cleaned in any way, but it has data in spreadsheets. So if you have someone on staff or if you want to dig into it, you can, but it is here. For HIPPY, you have a lot of reports available. So you might not ever have a need for this, but I just wanted to make sure you knew it was a thing that you could export all of these different kinds of data.
Nice.
Okay. But the reports generally look nicer, and there are ones that I want to make sure we go over. So we just talked about data exports and reviewing. So I will start with the caseload roster, actually. I think I really like this one. And I ran this one for you all yesterday, which is how I knew you had families. So, well, a general orientation to this page first. So the current year reporting start date, I would always default to July 1 of whatever reporting year you're in. So this one is July 1 of 2020. So that every report you run starts July 1 without having to change it, which at some point will probably become important to you. Then there are, I don't really know the difference between general reports, service reports, admin, state, and national reports, but a lot of the reports for you are going to be in this HIPPY reports column. These are definitely, these are built for HIPPY. PET doesn't have access to these reports. They are great. There's a ton of stuff over here too that may or may not be helpful depending on what you're trying to look at. The one I wanted to point out to you for sure is service counts. So service counts you can run by family, by child, or by home visitor. I run this all the time for McBee sites. And it tells you, let's see, so the date range, whatever date range you're looking at. So this starts July 1 till now. If you want your home visit, so these are all filters. So basically all of the reports you have different filters. Many of them start with, they basically all have a date range. Most of them, almost all of them have a date range. They pretty much all have site fund codes. So if you had a subset of families you wanted to report on differently, you could assign them a site fund code. And this is how you would separate them out. You would just pick, like, I only want to look at McBee people, or I only want to look at whatever this is, 38,000. So this is where you would do that if you ever need to do that. Home visitors, so you can run this for, like, I only want to look at families assigned to Melanie, or Jackie, or Joelle. And if you want to include your inactive home visitors, you can do that as well. I would, if you ever have a home visitor leave in the middle of the year, I would always hit inactive home visitors in case there are families assigned to that home visitor. Otherwise, they will not appear on your reports. So I just check this out of default just to be safe. If you're trying to look at all of your families, then definitely check that. Then here, then status is another common filter. So this one, you check, oh my goodness, the box next to the status is of people you want to see. So this report, if you were run it right now, it'll only show us active families. If you also want to see your exited families, then you would just check that box too. And same with these other statuses. So you just check, and it's the status of today, I believe. So if someone exited today, but they were active as of last month and you wanted to run this report for October, you would also want to hit exited. There's a lot of nuance to all these reports. So once you get in there, if it's confusing why people aren't showing up or why they are showing up, let me know, because they all are a little funky in their own ways. So I'm just going to hit get report and we can go. I'll just show you where we're headed. So it lists all of the families who were active and exited in the date range that we're looking at, the primary guardian name, their current status, their phone number, their enrollment date. High needs is based on PT stuff, so you can ignore that column. This is the home visitor that did visits with them. And then the private totals is the total number of home visits they received in the date range you're looking at. So this is one way where you could see if your families are on track to graduate, right? So if in January you're like, okay, how many people have already had 12 visits or something, you could run this report and see how many have had that many visits. And then the rest, there's just a lot of information about the contacts they have in that date range. So this is volunteer hours that you put into the visits. So probably will be blank. Oh, visits at home. I think that's what this means. This is new. I'm guessing this means that of the private total of the private visits, how many of them were in the home? How many had a father present? How many group meetings did they attend? So I just marked that I attended that group meeting in November, right? So that's here. You can add play groups or other kinds of events. And then if it was a prenatal visit, which for you it wouldn't be. And then these last columns are all other types of contacts. So the PH is phone. So you can see how many phone calls families are having. So maybe they're not having enough visits to be on track, but they are having a lot of phone calls. So they're still engaged. They're just not able to do role play. And then there's canceled by parent educator, which is what PT calls their home visitors. Canceled by parent, no show, phone, text, email, and other. So these are just all the different types of contacts that you can enter. And then at the bottom, it has the total families who were active and exited in your day range, and then the grand total number of visits that you had. So Melanie for McBee, this is what we would use for that monthly report, for that family count and the visit count. Because it made it so easy. So yes, okay. So if you ever want a list of visits per family in a date range, this is where I would point you to, is this service count. But yeah, there's a million filters. If you want to see people who have only had 0 visits or something, you would say families with exactly 0 private contacts. Then you hit get report, and then it's only showing you people who have never had a visit in the date range. So there's lots of ways to filter this depending on what you want to look at. Then they just recently added this other contacts report, which I've never actually run. And where'd it go? Oh, it's opening a spreadsheet. Interesting. And there aren't any listed. Curious. Maybe that will be useful someday, but I can't tell because there's nothing on it. Okay. Any questions on this report? No. Okay.
No.
Again, that one is service counts. Beyond that, I think all of the reports I'm going to show you are in this HIPPY reports column. So let me just open this Word again. So yeah, caseload roster. I think this report is great. So if you hit Caseload Roster over here, this shows you, so again, home visitor, it's basically going to list all of the children who are active in your program. So if you want to see them all together, then just make sure you can also select inactive home visitors in case you still have children assigned to an inactive home visitor if some home visitor leaves. And then you just hit HTML or CSV. This is a common option in Visit Tracker now too. So HTML will open in a new tab for us. I'll just show you that. So this lists all of the children you've entered, their home visitor, their family ID, the name, the site fund code. So if you had McBee, this is where that would be. Their family enrollment date, primary guardian information, the child information, and then their curriculum year and their curriculum language. So this is all of your active children. So it will not show you anyone who's exited or who is recruit. It's just those active kids, but it's a place to see them all together with their home visitor, which I think is kind of cool, and their curriculum year and their language. So a CSV option will open in Excel. So I think what you pick depends on what you want to do with it and how good you feel in Excel, right? So if this is the same exact information, it's just in Excel already for you. So you can filter or sort or do whatever, like paste it somewhere else if you need to. It's the same info, just already in Excel for you, so you don't have to copy paste. But that is the Caseload roster. And I ran this for both of you. It's looking great. Any questions on this roster? So again, it's reports and there's Caseload roster. There's Caseload Summary. So if it says summary, it's going to mean that it's totaling things up for you into different buckets. But the roster is what lists everyone individually. So we can run this Caseload Summary and let's see, we want to look at all children. And I put, like, I don't totally know why you'd want to run this. Presumably there's a reason because someone asked for this report. It might be some HIPPY USA accreditation report, I'm not sure. But it's telling you how many families are assigned to each home visitor, if they're active, how many children, and what curriculum year they're in, if you want to be looking at this. But then there's like, why are there so many? Yes, there's so many columns. So I get confused by looking at this and trying to figure out what I'm actually looking at, right? Like active children total, but then there's just so many. How is this different than that? Oh, then it's by language. Yeah, it's just a lot. There's a lot. But if it means summary, it means it's like totaling it up somehow. And I also do not have all these reports memorized. I usually have to run a bunch of them before I find the one I'm actually envisioning. Like there's one in particular that lists all the children and then how many packets they've, like the type, the packet number they've received. And that one, for some reason, I can never remember. So I usually have to run like 3 different reports before I find the right one. So just know, like, they're named so similarly, it's hard to remember which is which. And that's fine and totally normal because I do the same thing, because they're like Caseload Summary and Children's Summary and HIPPY Family Summary. Like there's no way to know how these are different really without running them, because these names tell me nothing, right? So I guess I would also encourage you to mess around, like as you start getting data in and find yourself with some extra time, you can click around on different reports and see what might help you out. But that roster, I do like a lot. So when you're doing your surveys and you need the child IDs and the guardian IDs, for example, that's where you would get it. Okay, so the packets delivery report is the one I was just talking about, I think. So it's here, not to be confused with the home visits delivered report, but this packets delivery report. So again, you hit the date range. I would look at all home visitors active and inactive, and make sure you change those McVie target children to no, because for this it's at least defaulting to yes, which for you would mean that no one shows up. So just make sure you change this to no. And then potentially you only want to look at active children, so then you'd only want to check that box. But if you do want to look at everyone, then leave it all checked. They get report. Well, this is sad. There's only 2 kids. Okay. So this is another one where there's only children entered that have a visit in your date range, but it lists the children, their curriculum year, and the packets that they've received based on what you've entered for their home visits. So theoretically, there should be an X in every box, right, up until their last packet received. So if you run this and there's like, they go 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, then you know, like, what the heck happened to week 3? Like, did I not check that box correctly in the visit? Or like, did they skip week 3? Like, what's going on? So this looks cool as the year goes on, right? Because the X's, I guess, as they go across the screen, and it just looks so nice and pretty. It might be different if children exit. So that's another way to see too, right? If all of your kids are week 15, except for 2 or something that are at week 3, it probably means they exited early, right? And that you'll probably know of your families. I feel like both of you are really good at knowing everything about all of your families. So you'll probably just have that memorized. But this is why I like the packets delivery report. So as you're entering visits, this is another good way to just make sure that you're doing that correctly in the system. Any questions on this report? Okay, part of this, I don't really expect you to remember all of these, but part of it is just so you know there are reports that will do things for you. And if you can't remember which one, let me know, or just run a bunch till you find the right one. But it's sort of my approach to Excel too. It's like, you just have to know that it's an option, and then we can figure out how to do it. But if you don't know it exists, then you can't, then you're like spending all this time trying to do something that a report probably exists for. The home visit record is another one that I point to a lot in terms of data auditing and making sure you're doing things correctly. So again, in reports, home visit record here. You can do this per child or per guardian. It tells you slightly different things. So we're going to do it per child first. And you know, because it says at the top, if you want to switch to the family report, you just click this. Oh, and it went, all of my options went away. That's not what it's supposed to look like. What happens if I hit get report? Probably nothing. Oh, they took that away. That's not good. Weird. Okay, I get to ask. I'm going to ask David about that too. That's not how that should go. Just a second. Okay, so we're going to run it per child. Again, for whatever day range you're looking at, presumably this program year. And the same filter about home visitors, the same filter for McVie. So this is like, you'll see these same filters over and over. And the status of the child or the family. I guess this would be the status for the child because we're running a child report. So if you hit get report and leave packet number blank, it tells you everything you can know about what you entered for that child's packet information. So child ID, first name, last name, the date of the visit, their curriculum year on that visit, the packet completed at the visit. For year 3, their read, talk, play number, the format of the curriculum. So this is that new field they enter of paper, PDF, or HIPPY 3.0. That's what would be here. The home visitor that completed the visit, if they did their prior packet, the average minutes spent on the prior packet, if you got that pull page, the reason why, if you didn't, days read in the last week, if you did an ASQ, well child, and ER. So you can really ignore these last 4 columns. So really these first ones. And so once you enter more data, this is another one that's cool because each child's visit will be grouped together. So you can see like Claire theoretically would have packets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they would be all in a row. And so you can see that she did them all and what days they were. If there was something missing, like say curriculum year 2 was marked by accident for one of them, this would tell you which visit you need to go to correct it so that it is also curriculum year 1. So this just gives you so much detail about what you entered and if it's all complete and accurate. So it's another way to go in once you've entered visits to make sure everything is looking neat and tidy. So this is the home visit record report. And there should be a family one that tells you like the other stuff you enter at the visit, which is also very helpful. I'm concerned that that is not a thing right now. Well, that's bad. I'll definitely ask about that. Any questions on that report? Okay.
Yeah, Rachel.
Here's accreditation. So these next 3 actually, part of what makes this report tab tricky is that there's secretly multiple reports. So the HIPPY USA quarterly report, once you click on it, is actually 3 different reports. So this is the group meeting report that I run to fill out the HIPPY USA quarterly report. This is also, we do run the family and home visit report to check or to compare our reports to, but you have access to that too if you want to see how you're doing. And site funding you can enter into Visit Tracker, and if you did, this is where you would run that. I've also asked them to make a staff and training report, so you can run that too, but it doesn't exist yet. But this families and home visits, it's a mega report to fill out that mega spreadsheet. It's the same as before, or as the other reports, right? Where it's for the date range, you can select site fund codes, and then all of our old reports are saved here. I'm just gonna look at an old report because it takes a while because it's so big. So if you look, this will show you all of the families you have served. Families have to have at least 1 visit to be reported here. So currently, if you ran this report, it might look like you only have 1 family or no families, but that's because they haven't had their visits entered yet. But it goes through table by table, all those demographics that you've entered and then go onto that mega spreadsheet. And it does some validation for you. So it'll also tell you if there is data missing. Yes, it's very long. And then at the end, it has its home visit information and the phone check-ins here. So if you want to know how you're doing on that family or home visit tab, or if your bosses are asking about the demographics of people you're serving or something like that, this is the report you can use to get that for them, or for you, or your families, or your home visitors. Whoever wants to know, this is a great report to see who you're serving in general. And then you can also, semi-secretly up here, export all of this data into a super huge spreadsheet as well. So you just hit get CSV. Something should be happening, yes. It's opening in Excel, and then this is a very underwhelming spreadsheet. Oh, because this is family data. Okay, I was like, what? So this is all the family data that is on that spreadsheet. Let's make this a little bigger. So how many visits people had, the demographics of the guardians. Then they have the same option for, everything went away, for children. And then it has lots more rows about what we're reporting on the children on that report. So again, if you have the capacity to deal with this spreadsheet, it can be very helpful. Otherwise, you can just look at those tables that they provided that total things up. And just another tip about Visit Tracker. If anything looks blue to you, it's usually a link to something. So in reports, if you hit something that's blue, it looks very similar for me in my screen, but if you click it, whoever is counted there pops up. So this family has more than one children enrolled in different curriculum years. So you can check out banana, or a lot of this, let's see, this fake data doesn't have very much missing data. But if you did, you could click on that to see who is missing something. Yeah, all of this, none of this is missing. So it's a little underwhelming. But over here, again, these are blue, right? And so you can click them and see who's included. And that's true of pretty much all the reports they do. This is a cool report, I think. So this again is under the HIPPY or the HUSA quarterly reports. If you want to run your own group meeting report, you can do that. You just pick the date range, hit get report, and it also opens in Excel. I really love their Excel reports. I mean, I do too. But if you make this bigger and wrap the text, you can see that it's calculating the people you marked as attending, the type of role play or the type of group meeting it was, if you did role play. So this looks just like that other big report, right? So I just copy this and put it into there, but you can also check out your group meeting report to see if it looks right to you. And that is one of those. Oh my goodness. I'll delete this. Again, so this is all under the quarterly report. Then there's accreditation, which when you, Jackie, when do they have their first visit where they have to run all those accreditation reports?
Well, this year it's not happening. Both Melanie and Gatti are in touch already with the national trainer for an initial visit. And technically you run those reports for that, but they're not reporting anything this year, like for the visits. Is that what you ask, or? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so when you have to run the reports, go here first because it does a lot for you. So again, it's the same, you're picking the date range. They do clarify who's included. So enrolled and served are two different numbers. So enrolled is anyone that is enrolled and not exited as of the last day in the date range, regardless of if they had a visit. And then served is people who had at least 3 visits in the date range. And this is defined by HIPPY USA. So this is different than a lot of other places in Visit Tracker. So just remember like who you're reporting on and which report is including which people. That is, I think, where a lot of confusion can happen. Okay, so you do the same thing, date range, and then I'll just look at one that was run in March because I think it's the same. See that little blue paper, and it comes up with this big report here. And it's really based on the HIPPY accreditation, right? So who's enrolled and served by curriculum year, the child race, the home visitor, there's a bunch of home visitor data, the curriculum year you're doing, right? So lots of stuff for you. Like before, I think you had to run like 1 million reports and pull together a ton of different data to get this together, but now it's all here for you. So when
that took me like 3 days as part of my accreditation preparation. So now it's just literally a click away.
Yeah, well, there's probably a couple clicks, right? So for whatever this one is, administration 2, it does say use the resource connection report to demonstrate the standard. So remember the resource connections we were talking about like an hour ago, where you're adding, like Jackie referred me to the dentist because my crown broke. There's a report that shows all of those resource connections and what happened as a result. So once you enter them, then you just run a report and it shows all of that. But yes, so this, I imagine, will be very helpful someday. So it is here. So before you break your back trying to run like 30 million reports, I would run this one first and then see what you need from there. And the other one that is secretly a bunch of reports is assessments and screenings. So you click on that and now there's all these. The one that I really wanted to, so most of the assessments and screenings reports will just show all of the ones you've entered and the results. So down here, if you did like the Bracken, it would just show you all of the Brackens that were completed and the results for those. It would not show you who should have a Bracken and did not. But what I wanted to pull out is this ASQ Bracken report, which was made by Texas. Thank you, Texas. They paid for this and then made it available to us. So the date range again is from July. You can pick the status of the children you want to look at and then how you want to order the report. So it's ordered by home visitor. If you hit get report. So this is showing our active children. And then all the way, goodness, where to go? Here in the middle. This is Bracken. So should we ever be able to do Brackens again? You can, for the one in the fall, mark it as an initial Bracken, and then the date will be here. And then for the Bracken in the spring, mark it as closure, and then the date will be here. And then you can run this report to just make sure that all of your kids are getting all the Brackens that they should be getting. And so there's no other way to do that. And PET sites don't have access to this. So it's like really a great report. Then Texas does the ASQ. So I think that's what all this is about. But you could ignore all of that screening info. It's really, I just wanted to show you this Bracken piece and how you can track those Bracken completions.